Chair Green, is 4:01 and we can start the meeting if you like.
Great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Calling this meeting of the San Mateo County Parks Commission to order Thursday, August 6, 2020. And I understand we have some instructions on the video conference and public comment.
That's correct, Chair Green. For regular public comment section, members of the public can comment on consent agenda items and any county-related matters that is not on this agenda. For each regular agenda item, public comment will take place after board discussion. My colleague Janet will provide instructions to the public on how to raise their hand during the Zoom meeting and when to unmute themselves. Madam Clerk, do you have any additional instructions?
No, I think you covered it.
Great, thank you. So I'll call item 1, our Pledge of Allegiance. We have, I think, a virtual flag for us to look at.
That's right. And I think you can see the flags right behind me, so.
Yes, thank you. Oh, you have a real in-person flag. All right, thank you.
All right. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 2 is a roll call.
Sure. District 1 is currently vacant. Commissioner Merrilees.
Present.
Commissioner Okello.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Mena. Let me just double check. Commissioner Mena is currently absent. Chair Green.
Present.
Thank you. We have 3 present and 1 absent.
Thank you. Item 3, public comment.
Sure. I'll ask my colleague Janet for verbal comments.
Thank you. As a reminder for those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Currently, I don't see any hands raised for this item.
Thank you. We'll give that just a second. Seeing no one in the queue, I'll call item 4, action to set the agenda. Do I have a motion from one of my fellow commissioners?
I'll move that we set the agenda for today's meeting. I'll second it.
Thank you. And before I take the roll call, Madam Chair, I do want to mention for item number 3, we did not receive any written comments. So I'll come back to item number 4. We have a motion on the floor and I'll take a roll call. Commissioner Merrilees.
Aye.
Commissioner Okello.
Yes.
Commissioner Mena is absent. Chair Green.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 5, the Parks Foundation Executive Director's Report.
I don't know, Suki, do you know, can you tell if Michelle Beasley might be trying to get into the meeting?
Sure, let me check, yes.
I see her as an attendee.
Right, so
And we've made her.
I just moved her over.
Perfect. Thank you. Give her a second to get her sound straight.
Michelle, I have unmuted your mic, you can talk.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Good afternoon, commissioners, park staff, and guests. My name is Michelle Beasley, and I'm the Executive Director of the San Mateo County Parks Foundation, and it's a pleasure to speak with you via Zoom this afternoon. I'd like to highlight a couple of things with you this afternoon. First, if you didn't catch an episode of Open Road with Doug McConnell earlier this summer, you can still watch it online. The episode, I think it aired at the end of June, and it featured Crystal Springs Regional Trail and our very own Ranger 3, Catherine Wright, who shared some of the highlights about the trail with Doug McConnell, along with a local historian, Michael Savanovic, and a San Francisco Public Utilities Commission rep, Tim Ramirez. So if you want to catch it, you can easily access the video via our website at supportparks.org. The other thing I'm happy to share is that the foundation is sponsoring the San Mateo County Parks use of an app called Outer Spatial. It's free to the end user. I encourage all of you to check it out. You can get current information in terms of what parks are open or closed, where there are one-way trails, and what events are, what virtual events are available in the parks. The Parks Department just got on it, so there are some kinks to be worked out, but I think it's a really great way to become more aware of the very expansive network of open spaces in the Bay Area. Other neighboring jurisdictions like Mid-Penn are on the app, and so you can see both Edgewood Park on one side of Edgewood Road and Polgus Ridge on the other side of Edgewood Road, and kind of see that larger network of open spaces. And what makes Outer Spatial different from other apps is it gives the Parks Department control over the information that the end user is seeing, which is different from other apps where usually the parks jurisdiction doesn't really have any control over the final information. So current information on closures, you would hopefully get to see that on this app. And then the third thing I really am happy to share is that the foundation recently completed a round of funding for wildfire fighting tools for park rangers. This was stuff like pull saws and chainsaws and water spraying backpacks to aid in their efforts to reduce fire fuel loads in parks like Quarry Park and Wunderlich. And on that note, I really just want to give a shout out to all the park rangers who have, since the beginning of the pandemic, been continually taking care of the parks, getting the parks ready for park visitors, and then taking care of park visitors. They truly are essential workers, and I think everyone can agree that parks have become even more important than we could have ever imagined before. And so it just behooves us to always make sure that we are always trying to direct as many resources to parks. So that is my update. Thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Any questions from commissioners?
Nope.
Commissioner Okello?
Nope.
None today. Okay, great. Thank you. Michelle, just one question for me on the fuel reduction fundraising. Are there further efforts in that area from the foundation expected?
Yeah, we've we've turned it into one of our core programs. And so, anyone can go on our website and actually restrict their gift to wildfire prevention resources. So we have had a number of donors who have generously done that. And that's what enabled us to make this gift this year. So I expect that to be a standing core program because it seems to mirror, it's a priority for the Parks Department to address and just to really be proactive in addressing undergrowth and fire fuel loads in our parks so that we will always be as safe as possible. So yeah, I think it's important for the foundation to support those efforts.
Thank you. And are services an eligible use of that or just equipment?
So far, we're open. This is an open conversation with parks. So right now it has just focused on the tools, but we're open to thinking creatively about how to continue to support the Parks Department in this effort.
Great, thank you so much.
And Chair Green, if I could just take a second to highlight the diversity of initiatives and efforts that the foundation is funding for the department, whether it's the Open Roads episode, fire fuel reduction efforts, our interpretive program. The foundation really is assisting us across the board. And Michelle has been doing just an amazing job in how she's receptive to our ideas, our needs, and how quickly she can respond to what we ask. So Michelle deserves a lot of credit for how she is supporting the department, and she just does a great job. So Michelle, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
All right. Do we have public comment on this item?
Thank you, Chair Green. I have not received any written comments, so I'm going to ask my colleague Janet to ask for a public comment verbally.
Thank you. As a reminder for those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Right now, I don't see any hands raised, but let's provide a few more seconds in case there's others that would like to raise their hand to speak on this item. Okay, seeing none, there are no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Move to item 6.1, the director's report. Nicholas.
Suki, would you be able to pull up the presentation by me?
Sure.
Perfect. So briefly in the August director's report, I focus on the department's existing operations and how we are providing services during the pandemic. During this brief presentation, I will highlight visitor data and compare May and June of 2019 versus May and June of 2020. So the commission can really see a snapshot of the increase in our users, but also understand the impact that that has on our operations and on our staff. Before I jump into that though, I will highlight on the screen the three images you see. And the first is that COVID-19 reopening plan, which I highlighted in last meeting's director report, which is a 4-phased approach to reopening the park system and the services and amenities that we make available. As of June 29th, the department's been operating under phase 2 of that reopening plan. And so what that really means is our trails are open, our open fields are open, and small picnic drop-in facilities are available for single household use only. So, you know, a single household family can come in and use a picnic, but we're still not allowing playgrounds to be open. We're still not allowing large group reservations to be open, and we're not allowing indoor facilities to be open. And that's really in line with the state health orders and the guidelines that we've been given. Also on the screen, you'll see 2 other images. The 4 R's is something that our public information officer, Carla Schoof, came up with. And it's really a catchy and an easy way to remind the public before the weekend of kind of the rules that we're asking everyone to follow. And so recreate responsibly really means pack in and pack out and be responsible with what your uses are in the park. Remembering your face covering is something that we're really trying to promote and encourage our users to do, even when they're in situations where they may not be required to do so. Rethink your plans means go online and check the facilities as to what's open, what's closed, but also have a backup plan if you show up to a park and it's really crowded. And then resize your group really means let's avoid large groups and let's really keep small groups and really mainly, if you can, just your household. And then on the far right is an image of the sign that we have throughout our park system. So this is the standard San Mateo County Park sign right now. And we use the universal symbols so that regardless of what your native language may be, we're still able to convey the message of maintain social distancing, throw your garbage away, wear your mask, and don't congregate in groups. So if you go into any of our parks, you will see that sign in many, many places. Suki, next slide, please. So District 1, which consists of Coyote Point and the Crystal Springs Regional Trail, as you can see, is seeing an increase in users. And as I stated at the beginning, we're comparing 2019 and 2020 data and from the exact same trail counter so we can provide the best sense of how we're seeing an increase in our uses. And something I'd like to point out is on the left, you'll see the Coyote Point Bay Trail segment, and that's just the northern segment. So while we're seeing a considerable percentage increase in users on that Bay Trail, that doesn't even reflect the people who are coming into the park to use the trails in the park, to use the fields in the park. And so that's just a snapshot of the Bay Trail. And the Crystal Springs Trail shows a considerable increase in users, And what's important to note is that this shows May and June of 2019 versus 2020. But in May of 2020, we weren't allowing bicycles on that trail. So that number would have been higher had we been allowing all the same uses. Bicycles are now allowed on that trail, but seeing that steep increase is really something that is reflective of what we're seeing across the system. Suki, next slide, please. District 2, which is really which consists of Edgewood, Hutter, Wunderlich, Flood, and Friendship, as well as is responsible for hosting Bicycle Sunday, you'll see again is seeing increases across the board. And as with the Coyote Point numbers, Edgewood, Hutter, and Wunderlich all have these other facilities that draw an attendance. And so whether it's the picnic sites, the reservation sites, the Ed Center at Edgewood, and the museum at Wunderlich, these are facilities that are currently closed. But as we continue to reopen facilities, we're going to see even more people coming to the parks. And so these numbers, once again, really just reflect the trail use that we're having as of May and June of this year, shown in green. Sugi, next slide, please. So District 3, which is our Southern County District, Sam McDonald, Pescadero, Memorial, you'll see, almost doubling our numbers. And what's important to note is, once again, trail use only, and with Memorial Park being closed, during a normal summer, that area is really functioning like a small town with people coming in and going, and we have all these facilities and people are coming in for riding bikes and riding horses and hiking. And right now we're really just open for trails. And while we recently opened our drop-in picnic sites in Memorial, that's not reflected in these numbers. So once again, just trail use is seeing a very steep increase. Next slide, please, Suki. Here you'll see District 4, which is our coastal district. And here we have 3 parks highlighted. There's many more in this district, including Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, which is closed, and Devil's Slide, which was closed for part of this period, which is why it's not reflected on here. You have Moss Beach Playground, which is closed due to reconstruction of the facilities, as well as the state guidelines, Murata Surf. So there's a lot of facilities that are not reflected in this data right here. But for these 3, Pillar Point Bluff and Quarry Park, which are really local hotspots, you're seeing an increase, which means people who have not historically been coming to these parks are coming now. And so the parks that we have and offer are being discovered by new users, which obviously is something that we're very excited about. San Pedro Valley, which has reservation sites that are closed and picnic sites that are closed, is also seeing almost over doubling of our visitor numbers in that period of time. So our parks across the board are seeing huge increase in users, and what that equates to is new users. So these numbers don't just reflect people who have always come to our parks and are always using our parks, but we're serving new users. We're reaching out to new communities, and that's something that we're really excited about, and excited about the opportunity to engage with these new users and get them to continue to use our parks, because that's what we're here to do. Suki, next slide, please. And I think probably the most impressive increase in users is right here in District 7, which is Junipero Serra Park and San Bruno Mountain. You'll see that increase at San Bruno Mountain is remarkable. Junipero Serra is also incredibly steep. And what's great to recognize here is that for the month of May, both parking lots at Junipero Serra Park and San Bruno Mountain were actually closed. So this is all walk-in traffic. Undoubtedly, people were driving and parking in the neighborhood and walking in. But to have the parking lots closed and at Junipero Serra, the playground closed, and still seeing these type of numbers is something that we are really excited to see, and really happy to promote that we have parks throughout the county, and we are able to support these numbers and once again, just on our trails. So really exciting for us. But it also means, Suki, if you could go to the next slide, please. What you'll see is with this comes an increase in services and an increase in demand on our resources. And so a couple of the areas where we've really seen a considerable increase is litter pickup and garbage service. So with more people comes more garbage. And staff is doing an amazing job getting the garbage cans turned over and cleaning litter that gets dropped. But what we are seeing still is people leaving either garbage on the side of garbage cans that are full, or people not packing out what they're packing in. And so it's taking a lot of time to go through and make sure that our parks are being cleaned, especially at places like Coyote Point, on our coastal trail segments, Pillar Point Bluff. Any garbage ends up going into sensitive areas or the water, and that's obviously something that we really don't want. Additionally, we are seeing an increase in demand for cleaning of our restrooms, and that's a natural thing. Given that we're in the middle of a pandemic, we need to be making sure that we're cleaning our restrooms, but with increased use also means that we're restocking them with supplies on a more frequent basis. And then lastly, we are also having to increase the patrols. So making sure that people are following the rules, whether they're new users who are unfamiliar with the rules, or maybe individuals who have forgotten. But we need to make sure that we are engaging with the public and making sure that they understand the rules, not just normal rules of the park, but also the rules that are based on the COVID pandemic that we're going through, wearing your mask and not congregating in groups and not forming big groups at our reservation sites. And so these are things that are a demand on staff's time. The staff's doing a great job. And as we move forward and as our reservation sites eventually, we don't know when, but eventually they will be reopened and our playgrounds will be reopened. And so, that's why we rely on that reopening plan to strategically ask ourselves, what do we have the resources to maintain? What do we have the resources to open or keep closed? And how do we make sure that people who are coming to our parks are safe and in a safe and welcoming environment? And for us, we have a conversation on a regular basis as to, are we making sure that the people who are coming into our parks are safe? And I'm happy to report at this point that we believe they are. So, so with the increased use comes an increase in the demand on staff's time. And I think, just to take a moment right now to highlight the hard work of the park staff and the rangers and the park aides. They are doing an amazing job under an incredible amount of stress. And, every day they're seeing more and more people coming into the parks, and staff is keeping just a great attitude about it. They have a great smile on their face, and they are welcoming and engaging and deserve nothing but the highest praise for the job they're doing right now. Suki, next slide, please. One thing that's come up a lot, though, are one-way trails, and I do just want to address this quickly. When we first reopened our parks, we had several one-way trails in the park system, and today we continue to have several one-way trails in the park system, including down in San McDonald, Junipero Serra Park, San Bruno Mountain, and San Pedro Valley. We had one-way trails at Edgewood and Hutter. This is something that's come up a lot, and so I do want to bring this to the commission's attention. We had to eliminate the one-way trail systems there. And as stated in the memo, there were really three reasons. One, people were choosing not to follow the one-way systems, whether it was not properly planning the hike or just blatantly choosing not to follow the rules. And what was happening is this was creating altercations between individuals. Secondly, we were having traffic jams on our trails when people were traveling at different speeds. And then third, we were having people removing the signs or turning them around, and that was taking a lot of the staff's time to correct that. So we still have one-way trails, and we have that promoted on our website. But at Hutter, Hutter and Edgewood, we've removed them. And we've heard from a lot of people who are really happy that we've done so. So we made sure that in removing them at those parks, we still kept them elsewhere though. So we want to make sure that people are aware of that. With that said, that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you very much. I'll ask my fellow commissioners if you have any comments or questions for Director Calderon.
I do. Yeah, I just, yeah, we're in a really trying time right now, and that we're having double the visitors in almost all of our parks is something that I think nobody thought they'd have to deal with right now. But thank you for keeping the parks open, and thank the staff for doing such a great job, Scott, in keeping everything going and keeping everybody safe. I mean, you really should be getting part of the health department's budget right now, because it really is a health issue that people need to get outside and breathe fresh air and not congregate in bars and restaurants. So yeah, you're doing an amazing job, and hopefully it won't go on too much longer, but thank you for keeping it all going.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Commissioner Cal-
I would echo those very same comments. I think the department has been very fortunate in terms of having a very good staff. And I think they handle the public, I think exceptionally well.
Commissioner O'Callaghan, might you check just the position of your mic, your words? I'm at least having trouble hearing the words.
Can everybody hear me?
That's better. Thank you so much.
Okay. That's why I don't have my ears on, because normally I have to raise my body all the way up and see my face. But I think it's wonderful that we have such a wonderful staff. We've got good PR and are able to handle the kind of challenge that I think the department is facing currently with the humongous number of people that are coming to the park. And I hope we can sustain it, because I think with COVID, we do not know when things are going to change, and even when they do change, I think most likely all the people that have encountered our parks for the first time are going to come back again, and I'm sure that's exactly what we want instead. But Director Calderon, there are a couple of questions that you raised for me.
Sorry, Commissioner O'Callaghan, this is the clerk. I'm sorry. We can barely hear you. The voice is cutting out, and for recording purposes, we can barely understand the words. Sorry.
Okay, can you hear me better? I think when I look down, it sort of fades a little bit. But, so I have some questions for the director. The huge numbers, raises the question for me as to what is our capacity of all the parks. So are we going to reach a point where we're going to do like Home Depot, where people are going to have to line up, to sort of get in, and do we have a way of figuring out where many becomes too many? And then the other question is, with a lot more people, quite expectedly, there's going to be a lot more trash, and it's going to put a burden on our staff to, certainly maintain a certain level of cleanliness. And so, have we given some thoughts to? I know we have enough garbage bins around, but somehow people seem to ignore them. So, has some thought been given to just provide additional signage and, polite signage will just remind them that, we do have trash bins and if they could do the right thing and just deposit their trash into the bins and so on and so forth. I've been to Wonderland and some of the other parks, and the bins are there, but there's not necessarily anything that reminds them that you got to use the bin. And now that we're particularly having very big numbers, then this problem is going to get worse.
Yes, Commissioner. So to answer your first question, I don't think we've hit the capacity of the parks, and I think what keeps the capacity at a lot of these parks at peak time is going to be your parking restrictions. So for a lot of our parks, I think the best example is going to be Wonderlic, for example. You have a parking lot. There are currently no parking restrictions on Highway 84, and there are some access points up top, but by and large, Wonderlic's peak time, its capacity is going to be capped by how many people can just simply access it because of parking. When you get into parks like Huddart and Edgewood that have more access points and more parking opportunities, I'm confident that our parks can support the numbers that we're seeing at this time. With that said, unfortunately, it's hard to look further than, a month down the road, given the COVID situation. And to be perfectly honest, with the county going on the governor's watch list last week, that means that a lot of these indoor facilities are going to be or have closed. And so we are monitoring very carefully if over the last week and if in the coming weeks, we're going to see an increase in uses because these other indoor facilities have closed. I don't believe we've hit our peak capacity yet, but if we do, we will have to start evaluating things like, what Home Depot's doing, and so we will continue to evaluate that. But for the time being, San Mateo County Parks are open and welcoming people who want to come in and use them. And to answer your second question, maybe Commissioner, could you maybe remind me, give me a brief, the second question was regarding.
The garbage.
That's right, thank you.
The extent of the garbage.
So we have two separate signage in our parks. One is the one that was in the presentation that you will see when you enter any park, when you enter any trailhead, usually around restroom facilities. And then we have a second sign that I didn't include in the presentation that is around the picnic sites, and it has different rules on it. One of which is, please make sure to throw your garbage away. In addition to that, we've actually published two separate videos, which I'd be happy to send to the commission. One of when we first reopened and one right before 4th of July that really promoted pack it in and pack it out. And with that said, we're also going to continue to make videos and continue to promote it on social media. So I think the knowledge is out there. I think people know, and we want to make sure that we're being responsible with the signage, so we're not adding too much. If you add too much signage, people tend to not look at it. It gets overwhelming. In fact, that's why that sign that I had at the beginning of the PowerPoint was kind of a consolidation of multiple slides that we had. So, or signs that we had. So I think the signage is there. I think the knowledge is there. We just need to continue to frankly engage with people. And but with that said, I also want to draw attention to Stu Smith, who's the Parks Department's volunteer coordinator, who's done a great job even in this time getting people to come into the parks and do some cleanups. And he deserves all the credit for that. Really helpful, especially that 4th of July weekend. And so that's been a help for us as well.
If I could just add a few comments through the chair. I have a girlfriend who's just crazy about trash. So when you go to Wonder Lake, she picks up trash and deposits it accordingly. So I was just wondering whether it could be possible to provide users, with the trash bags and with a little encouragement so that when they go along the trail, they can sort of help in trash pickup. That's a wild idea, but I have a girlfriend that does that already. She hates to see trash on the trail, so she'll pick it up. She'll pick them up. And so if you could try, just try something else, just to emphasize the point that please don't trash, because we don't want to overwhelm our staff, without additional responsibility of cleaning up the others. That concludes my statement.
Commissioner. Yeah, and that's something we will certainly consider and speak with some of our partners to see if they've tried that and what type of success it's had.
Thank you. I had just a couple of questions about the demographics of visitors. Do you know anything about how long people stay when they visit the parks?
Chair Green, yeah, that's a great question. We don't have that information yet, but what we are doing is working with Stanford to collect a lot of that information. That's really a ongoing and evolving process to tell us where people are coming from, how long they're staying in our parks, if certain communities prefer a certain park versus another. So we're working with Stanford to try to identify all that information, and would love to present it to the commission when we've kind of wrapped our head around it. As you can imagine, it's kind of a daunting task, and we're working pretty diligently on it, though.
That's interesting and answers my next question. So I'll ask a follow-up there, which is like, who's doing, like, what's the nature of the partnership?
Yeah, actually, Stanford reached out to our health system maybe back in April or May, and essentially said, hey, look, we have certain resources available to help collect and compile data and analyze that data for local jurisdictions as they start to reopen and start to provide services again. So we jumped on that right away. We said, yes, we want in. We're happy to be a partner. And so they are working to collect all that information and compile it. And then the next step is we'll meet together to review it and then refine it. But they're doing all the back end. And unfortunately, I am not a tech savvy person, so I could not at this time walk you through how they collect it. I could find that out for you, though.
No, that's okay. I do want to know, though, if it sounds like they're collecting zip code, maybe. Are they collecting racial data also?
I can find that out for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I mean, I'm sure they're underway, and I have to imagine that's part of what they care about. But obviously that would be of interest as we think about like delivering parks equitably and knowing whom we serve. Wonderful. Last question from me is, top of mind for me as a parent is the school situation and what families are confronting, looking at distance learning going forward. Has there been any conversation or partnership between our department and the districts we, kind of cover at the schools level, thinking about, the thought that comes to my mind is thinking about, like, can there be science curriculum that suits the different grades that are present and available in the parks department, or like, can people, so I guess I'm just thinking, because like, I know one of the challenges is like for working families dealing with school during the week when the kids don't have school to go to is challenging. And so some of the weekend time may be used for school time. And so if the parks can be part of that, like delivering a place for science curriculum to be fulfilled, I feel like that would be an elegant and meaningful contribution. Have you guys done any of that?
Yeah, we have. Actually, Ranger Catherine Wright and Ranger Lauren Ford Peterson have both reached out to schools to talk to them about what are their actual needs. I think one of the things we caught ourselves doing early, and Catherine deserves, Ranger Wright deserves all the credit for this, is we started talking about all the ideas we want, all the things we wanted to do to help the schools. And then she brought up the question, why don't we ask the schools how we can actually help them instead of assuming we know how we can help them. And so the interpretive program has been doing an awesome job reaching out to the teachers they've worked with in the past and really understanding, how can we best help you? Is it a 15-minute video? Is it an hour-long video? Is it a program in the park? How can we best assist you? And so they've been collecting that information. One thing I will point out is, our interpretive program is a two-person team. It's led by Ranger Wright, and Ranger Ford Peterson is also on that team. And Ranger Ford Peterson will be going to the county's COVID-19 tracing team. And so So the interpretive program was a one-person program. It grew to a two-person program. It's going back to a one-person program for about 12 months. At which point it'll go back to a two-person program, right? It's one of the things that we got to balance as we go through this pandemic. But we're collecting that information and developing that program as we go through it right now.
Thank you. I can't imagine that, that's a huge load for one person. So salute to Ranger Wright as always. She's quite a show. I guess I would just say that and I think, the school situation is such that the administration may think one thing is useful, teachers may think a very different thing is useful, and parents still may think a third thing is useful. And so, it may be the case, perhaps as you're, reaching through whatever, regular channels you have with park visitors, gauging interest from families who actually come or could, to be able to knock off a subject on the weekend with your family, I think for some families would be appealing at least. And so it would be probably not so much with the school administration coordination, but more with teachers and parents. And happy to help, think about how to gather what we need for that. It might not even be something for the start of the year. Obviously that's upon us, but into the fall, we just have such good weather all year long for the most part. And seems like a good opportunity to help some learning get out, especially for kids who, have more challenged home environments. That is it from me. Public comment on this item?
Sure. For the public, we're on item number 6. And just for the record, Chair Green, we don't have Chair Mena yet on the line. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please proceed with the verbal comment.
Thank you. As a reminder, for those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. I do not see any hands raised, but let's provide a few more seconds in case there are others that want to raise their hands to speak. Chair Green, I don't see any hands raised.
Thank you.
And also, Chair Green, no written comments received for this item.
Okay.
If I could, through the chair, Green, I just want to thank the commissioners and for recognizing where the department has been in these unprecedented times, the high volume of people in the parks and the outstanding job that the Parks Department has done, even reaching out in interpretive and keeping morale up has been a challenge because they've been worked hard and Director Calderon has kept a very quick and close pulse on what's going on and has been in every step of the way, and it's been very helpful. I really appreciate that the commissioners realize with the numbers that have been in the parks, this has been an extreme challenge at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work of everyone. It's just tremendous what you're delivering, and we're so grateful. Thank you. To the next item, our regular agenda. Can I call items 7.1 and 7.2 together? Approval of the February 6, 2020 Parks and Rec Commission meeting minutes and approval of the June 4th, 2020 Parks and Rec Commission meeting minutes.
If I could make a comment, I don't have a problem with the June meeting. I still have a problem with the February 6th meeting. And I did email Laurie this morning, to ask for some additional information. I did go ahead and listen to the whole meeting. And I think the motion I made, if the context is not included as a background, that whole motion does not make sense. It appears as if the commissioner was talking about apples, and then Commissioner Okello, presented a motion about oranges. And so with the background not there, I don't think it's fair to have that statement the way it is. And I think that was my concern last time, and I was hoping I was going to be able to, interface with Laurie today, but that unfortunately not happening.
Okay, and do you need to see the phrasing of the context that would be added in order to,
No, I actually did apologize to her as well, because I really should have included the context within the motion. Then we would not have this problem.
no problem. It's not a problem at all. Just get it right.
All the statements that I made prior to making that motion, by it not being there, that whole motion does not make sense at all.
Do I have it right that if the comments you made prior to your motion were included in the minutes, that's what you're looking for to be included?
Yes.
Could we like move to amend the minutes to include that language and approve them as amended?
Commissioner Green, yeah. If Commissioner Okello is so inclined, he could make a motion to approve the February 6th minutes with whatever amendments or changes he wants to make. And if there was a second, then you could take action on that.
Okay, thank you. Before calling for motions, are there any other comments on the minutes of either meeting?
I would just recommend, Commissioner Green, that you do these two items separately.
So I'll call for separate motions. Is that okay? Or should I we'll just call 7.1? Should I?
I think calling 7.1 and proceeding and doing a vote and then doing 7.2 would make the most sense.
Sounds fine. So I rescind earlier. I call item 7.1, and we are here discussing only item 7.1, the approval of the February 6th, 2020 Parks Commission meeting minutes.
So as suggested, I would like to make the motion that we adopt those minutes with the understanding that the comments that I made prior to making the particular motion are included in the minutes.
Okay, thank you. So to move to accept the minutes with the amendment to include Commissioner Okello's remarks made prior to his motion in those minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Chair Green, just to make sure, what item is that before the motion?
We are discussing item 7.1, but Commissioner Okello, I believe Suki's asking about which item the motion, like which item in the minutes are you talking about?
Correct, exactly.
Which item in the minutes are we talking about?
If I may, it's item 7.1 from the February 6th.
No, actually 7.4, off-stage dog access policy recommendation.
Item 7.4.
Okay, got it. I'll work with the staff and Director Calderon and Lori to make sure that we include the comments for 7.4 on February 6th. So we have a motion on the floor, and I'll take the roll call now. Commissioner Marilis?
Aye.
Commissioner Okello?
Aye.
Commissioner Mena is absent. Chair Green?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes for 7.1.
Thank you. Item 7.2, approval of the June 4th, 2020 Parks and Rec Commission meeting minutes. Any comments, or do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we accept the minutes.
I'll second it.
As presented.
Thank you. Okay, so roll call vote, please.
Sure. Commissioner Marilis?
Aye.
Commissioner Okello?
Aye.
Commissioner Mena is absent. Chair Green?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 7.3, presentation regarding the Parks Department's strategic priorities. Director Calderon?
Suki, would you be able to pull up the presentation?
Sure, I'll pull that up right now. Yes.
Suki, thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Perfect. So Chair Green had asked that I give a presentation on the department's strategic priorities. And so, I think where I started was, what are strategic priorities? And the best answer I heard was how you must behave in order to achieve your organization's goals. And I think our goals are really well defined in our mission statement, which is to preserve the county's natural and cultural treasures, to provide safe access to parks, and to create recreational and learning opportunities. And if we're able to do these three things, we can enhance the quality of life for our residents and guests, and we'll also be able to build a connection between people and the natural world. And that's really what we're here to do. Sugi, next slide, please. But we can't talk about strategic priorities without first discussing COVID-19 and the financial state of the county. San Mateo County was added to the governor's watch list this past week, and we are anticipating a shortfall of over $100 million. And for the Parks Department, this translates to a 5% reduction in our operating budget, or about $750,000. Also, we closed last fiscal year down about $700,000 from our projected revenue as a result of COVID-19. And so these two factors will impact our ability to fill ranger positions, to hire park aides, to complete projects. And in fact, that 5% reduction will be the topic of a presentation given by Rolando later today. But in addition to the financial shortfalls, we also have to accept that COVID's going to have an impact on our operations. You heard earlier about the increase in numbers. One of the other impacts of COVID is we have 3 rangers who will be going to the COVID tracing team for 12 months. We have rangers who are and park aides who are working at COVID testing sites. And so we have to be able to factor all this in. And the reality is, I think the county manager summarized it very well not too long ago when he said, we're in the second inning of a 9-inning game with regards to COVID. And I think that's the right mindset that we have to have, and understanding that this is something that we'll be dealing with for a long time. And so we have to factor that into things like our strategic priorities. Sugi, next slide, please. But with all that said, it doesn't change what our priorities are. It only changes how we want to accomplish those. And when I think about our strategic priorities, there's really 3 factors of it. It's our visitor services, our natural resource management, and our infrastructure and our facilities. And so throughout the presentation, these are the priorities in which I'll be speaking about and explaining how they fit into our, really our 3 to 5 year goal and vision. Suki, next slide, please. I think it's important, when I first joined the department, one of the first things I was told is we don't tell people how they can use our park within reason. We make a park accessible and accommodating for how people want to enjoy the natural environment around them and how they're most comfortable. And I think that's something that we've really set up a great park system around. But for us right now, the challenge is, how do we make our interpretive program events, whether it's take a hike, nature hikes, birding, coyote nights, movie in the park, how do we make those appropriate for a COVID and a post-COVID world? I think one of the biggest things we need to do is change our mindset around what a visitor is. A visitor is no longer just someone who is in our parks, but a visitor is also someone who's engaging with the department virtually. And Ranger Wright has been doing a great job offering virtual programming, whether it's story time with a ranger, campfire sing-alongs, and nature minutes, right? Videos where people can engage with the department, learn about the natural world all through their phone or their computer. And I think another great example that was just posted last week was, it was National Ranger Day. And Ranger Wright did a great job interviewing rangers about what they love about their job and what their day-to-day activities are like. And so how do we, during this time, continue to engage with the public, but virtually? And I think a great example of that, Suki, next slide, please, is outer spatial, which Michelle Beasley from the foundation was talking about earlier, and which we are really excited to be a part of. And giving people the opportunity to properly plan their experience is important, whether it's understanding what amenities are open and closed. It goes back to the 4 R's and the rethink your plan. But but what's open, what's closed, what trails are accessible, where are one-way trails, all that information are things that people can access through Outer Spatial, and connecting the virtual world with the natural world is something that we have a great opportunity to do right now. And I think we're doing a great job meeting that, because by doing that, we improve the visitor services. Suki, next slide, please. But the question that I'm going to push this department to answer is, how do we offer more with the same amount? And what I mean by that is, how do we expand our uses and how do we expand access without taking new property? And, you know, earlier it was asked, have we hit our capacity for our park system? We have seen a huge increase across the board in users in our parks, and we have not hit our capacity. And so what that means is we need to be thinking strategically as to how do we expand those uses. On the screen, you're going to see 4 images. The top left is a pump track. We're getting ready to start that process at Quarry Park. We'll eventually build one at Flood Park as well. And that's a new use. We are being more welcoming to mountain bikes and biking by doing those 2 projects. By doing those 2 projects, we're also going to be pressed to think about mountain bikes on our trails and how do we make that happen. I can't commit that that's something we're going to get done anytime soon, but that's something that we're absolutely going to evaluate and have those conversations. We also are in the middle of expanding usage by allowing off-leash dogs pursuant to a pilot program, or at least making a recommendation around that. And then lastly, the top right is something that I'm probably most excited about. And it's kind of hard to see, but it's a beach wheelchair. It is a wheelchair that has really big tires that you can use on a beach. And the department is in the process of designing the Tunitas Creek Beach Park. And as part of that, we are including programmatic access to the sand. And so what that means is, even if you have accessibility challenges, we still want you to be able to enjoy that beach. And so how do we look at that from a programmatic perspective and make that happen? Great example of us offering a new use while not taking on new property. We've already taken on Tunitas, but really, really excited about that opportunity. Suki, next slide, please. And so one of the things that I want to pull into this are our performance measures. And so what you'll see here are 3 of the department's performance measures. It's a number of annual volunteer hours benefiting the parks, percentage of customer survey respondents rating services good or better, and number of annual park visitors. I do want to specify 2 things. One, the numbers shown before you are mid-year projections, so we're in the process of updating these. But also, you know, our numbers from last fiscal year are undoubtedly going to be different because of COVID. Our annual numbers are definitely, you know, we were closed for the entire month of April, but prior to that we saw a spike, and after that we saw a spike. So how's that going to work? Even when we opened in May, we still had parks closed. So these numbers are going to be, you know, this year's numbers are going to, or last year's fiscal year numbers are going to look a little different. But you know, that's something that we need to understand and be understanding of. Suki, next slide, please. The next strategic priority is our natural resource management. And for us, we manage over 16,000 acres. And within that, we have countless habitat types and rare, threatened, and endangered plant and wildlife species. As part of our obligation, we need to survey these species and restore and preserve the habitat they rely on. This includes the bay checker spot butterfly, the San Mateo thornmint, harbor seals, western snowy plover, marbled murrelet, the San Francisco garter snake, red-legged frog. The list goes on. And I think it's important that we remember, and I think the department has always done this and will always do this, and that's our obligation to our native flora and fauna are just as important as our obligation to our visitors. And after all, people come to our parks because they're beautiful, because they can connect with the natural world. And if we lose sight of that, then I think we lose something really special about our parks. And once again, the department's always done a great job keeping that in mind. But it also means that we need to look forward and say, where are new restoration opportunities, whether it's the Tunitas Creek dunes for the snowy plover, the San Vicente Creek, the coast yellow leptosiphon, which is a small population of plant that only occurs on the mid coast and in a very small area, only place in the world. How do we bring that species back? And those are things that we're having to ask ourselves on a regular basis. Suki, next slide, please. But while we're talking about these smaller communities and smaller spot-specific projects, I also want to push the department to think in big scale. So 1 acre, 5 acre projects are good, but we want to continue what we started last year with, with the 160 acre fuel reduction project with CAL FIRE. And this upcoming year, we're working and we're in the middle of planning a 415 acre forest health and fuel reduction project with the San Mateo Resource Conservation District. In order to have a lot of great benefit for our ecosystem and to improve the ecological value of our parks, I'm pushing us to think bigger and big acreage. And what that means is we're gonna have to spend a lot more time in the planning process. We're gonna have to spend a lot more time working with our partners and engaging with stakeholders and modifying the project over and over again until we get to a point where everyone's comfortable with it and we can fund it and implement it. But we really want to start looking at big scale projects. And I do want to take a second to call out our natural resource management team and Hannah Ormshaw, who do an amazing job with these projects and really work round the clock on making sure that we're able to get these projects done, especially around fuel reduction and making sure we're doing it in a way that doesn't damage the environment. That was, we really put a lot of that responsibility on our natural resource management team, and they've done a great job and deserve all the credit for that. And I'm really excited to see that 415 acre project at Huddard and Wunderlich done. Suki, next slide, please. And as part of that, back in fiscal year 18-19, we created a new performance measure, and that was total acreage of fire fuel reduced. That was not a measure we had before as a department, but it was one that we added because we felt so strongly that reducing fuel load is something that needs to be a priority for this department. It's always been a priority for this department, but measuring that and tracking that is something that we're doing in a different way now. And that's why you see it on the screen as one of our performance measures. Suki, next slide, please. And the last is infrastructure and facilities. We have a lot of infrastructure and facilities, and we have a lot of deferred maintenance that we need to catch up on. And the reality is, when individuals come to our parks, they are used to having a high quality experience, and they're used to having well-maintained trails. They're used to not having run-ins with poison oak or big gullies down our trails, down trees. That's not the experience people have when they come to our parks, and that's not what they're used to. So our rangers do an amazing job, whether it's brushing the trails or doing playground inspections. Suki, next slide, please. They do an amazing job maintaining our picnic sites, our reservation sites. David Vasquez down in District 3 Memorial Park and his team have been doing an amazing job going through all the picnic areas and the day use areas in Tan Oak and updating the picnic tables there. They're working on the fire pits, and then after that, they're going to go over to the campsites and really upgrade those facilities as well. Suki, next slide, please. And then, we also have bridges. What you don't see, though, is we have water lines, we have sewer lines, we have a wastewater treatment plant, we have numerous restrooms in our parks. We have, you see the bridge. And then on top right, what that is actually a fire road that also serves as a trail. And one of the things that's really important about that image is that fire road in particular. When we had a fire in San Bruno Mountain back in February, that fire road served its purpose and served as a break, a fire break, and helped contain the fire before firefighters were able to get on site and extinguish it. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we're maintaining these whether they're fuel breaks, trails, all of that. And And then on the top left, you'll see a trail running under some tree branches, right? Those are things that we have to inspect on a regular basis to make sure that we are offering, once again, safe facilities. And the rangers deserve all the credit in the world. And Scott does a great job leading them to make sure that, once again, when people come to our parks, they are they're coming to a safe and welcoming environment. Suki, next slide, please. The performance metrics around this really are capital projects that have been managed by the Parks Department and that are on track to be completed on time and within budget, managed by the Department of Public Works that are on track to be on time and on budget, and then also grant received per dollar. And you'll see that last line there in the middle chart is very high. And that was because the department received over $6 million in grant funding for Tunitas, and as well as we've received other funding for fuel reductions and other types of projects. So we've been really successful in the grant area, but also we have a lot of capital projects going on right now, and staff's doing a great job keeping those forward, keeping those moving, whether it's the wastewater treatment plant at Memorial, the wastewater collection system, the restrooms and shower rooms, Tunitas Creek, Eastern Promenade. We have so much, a flood park, there's so much going on. But at the end of the day, we have a lot of work we need to do to make sure that we continue to provide great services and make sure that our parks continue to serve the public. And I really think we're doing a great job at that. Suki, next slide, please. With all that said, though, we can't do it alone. And we rely on a lot of partners to help us. And you will see you see some of those partners on the list here in front of you. And it's great being in a field where you have a shared interest with so many entities and agencies who want to lend a helping hand. And likewise, we're ready to jump in and help them when necessary. And it's really reflective of our understanding and everyone's understanding that at the end of the day, people just want to know that they have safe and enjoyable parks to go to. And all of us have the obligation to provide that. Once again, I just want to take a second to recognize the staff of the department, though. The staff of this department works so hard and works hard for the public, and to make sure that we are keeping up with our tasks and meeting our responsibility and doing it with a smile on our face and really serving the public, especially right now more than ever, when being outside and getting fresh air and having new experiences and having something to look forward to. Those are all so important. And those are also all things that we provide. And so I just want to take a second to call out the staff of this department who does an amazing job day in and day out. And I couldn't be more proud of them. Next slide, Suki, please. Thank you. With that said, I'm happy to answer any questions from the commission.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, any questions or comments for the director?
I know, that was a great presentation. Thank you.
Commissioner Okello?
Yes, just a few comments. And specifically to some of the performance measures you suggested the department is tracking. I would like to suggest at least one more. I think it's very easy to get the number of volunteers assisting us in this work. And it's very easy as well to do a customer survey and get some kind of idea as to how well the department is doing. And I think it's also fairly easy to count the number of park visitors that we do get. But ultimately the parks are there. The facilities that we have the restriction over are there for the gratification of people. So people are central to everything that we do. We manage the natural resources because we're managing it for them. We do all the infrastructure development, facility development, facility maintenance, for people ultimately, to gain that gratification. So, and this might be something that the foundation should probably even think about as well, is that we can track the amount of support that the foundation is getting. People that are supporting the foundation, and probably they have experienced our part. Whether it's a question of purchasing a bench in memory of a family member, or it's a question of actually committing to donating annually to the Parks Foundation for those funds to get directly, to the Parks Department. So if we could add that as a mechanism, through which we can track. So for instance, the last couple of years, have the donations gone up? Given the number of visitors that we're getting, particularly this year, are we expecting donations to the Parks Foundation to go up? Because I think that will be the clearest illustration of how happy people are and how appreciative people are of the work that we do.
Thank you. Any further comments from you guys? I had a couple of questions. Okay, so you talked about the desire to expand our services in the space that we've got. I guess one thing that occurs to me in this moment that is, it's not a permanent new use, but to the extent that we can support the health department in their messaging and outreach to, to help reduce the spread of COVID, specifically thinking about doing that in language. Can you talk a little bit, I know we have our 4 R's, but can you talk a little bit about the collaboration between our department and the health department to make sure that we're delivering the right message at the right time and that we're reaching people that are hard to reach otherwise?
Yeah, so from a messaging perspective, we are closely working with the Emergency Operations Center, or the EOC. And Carla, who is our PIO, is also working with the EOC's Joint Information Center. And so we are making sure when we develop, whether it's signage or some type of messaging, we're always checking it against what the EOC is saying, and making sure that our messaging does not conflict with that of the EOC. So, so that's how we're making sure that we are sharing the same message. The EOC, or the county, actually has also just initiated a new campaign around wearing your mask. And so we will, in our parks, further support that messaging as part of that campaign as well.
And will you be doing that in languages other than English?
I will need to get back to you on that. I believe the EOC does, the EOC uses a variety of strategies, including universal symbols. But we will be doing it in I know it will be in multiple languages. I need to identify which ones.
I guess as you go, obviously watching the county data every day, as so many of us are.
Yeah, every morning.
Right, there's an obvious statistical need to do better with our Latino community, and whatever outreach we are doing in neighborhoods that reach them, to amplify health messages, so that we are, co-benefiting what has to be the most urgent strategic priority for all of us, I think, at this time. Just trying to seek every possible way to communicate. I think I submit it might be more than just about wearing masks, but just people understanding, asking the JIC and the EOC for additional messages that they're trying to get to neighborhoods and households that are especially high risk with multi-generational workers and so families. I just think we all need to do as much as we can.
Yeah, and my understanding is the EOC is doing their print in English, Spanish, and I believe it's simplified Chinese. So that's how they're doing their print language.
Yeah. And just, I guess, like at every opportunity, like, I guess what the department can take upon itself to do is like every time we do any outreach to like make that available to all the people we're talking with. And then on the natural resources management one, just like a huge thank you for the fuel reduction measure. I think that's so important for years going forward for the rest of our lives. So I'm really happy to see that in there. You talked about species preservation, and it just occurs to me, like, I don't know if you guys keep a list, like, is there a list of things that are like really special for San Mateo County when it comes to preservation? And it just occurs to me, like, as a, you know, fundraising opportunity and potentially in partnership with the foundation, you know, you can always find someone who's especially excited about one plant or animal or another. And just, it seems to me like ripe fodder for fundraising.
Yeah, I know our natural resource management team has a list of specifics and where those species are. And, you know, I think San Bruno Mountain and Edgewood Park are really great examples with the butterfly species that are there. And now with Tunitas and the Western Snowy Plover, as well as Fitzgerald with the harbor seal. So you'll see, like, you know, each region or park has this really precious species that we work to preserve and promote.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I believe Carla Schuf, one of the parks employee, wanted to talk, I think, on this item. So I'll make sure to unmute her right now so she can say a few words.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I was actually just sort of chiming in regarding your question, Commissioner Green. Working with in the JIC, we sort of have firsthand knowledge and know where we're headed in terms of communication. So we do, I would say, amplify our messaging when it's identified as a need, but also we're really aware of the current, I would say, communication campaigns that the county is launching, and we support those. So one of the campaigns that just started a couple of weeks ago is, you know, all this together, working together to fight COVID-19. And so maybe, you know, amplifying those messages in parks, including hanging banners in parks that have the graphic images and the link back to the information on the county's website. So we're really aware of that. And we also, as a department, prioritize materials when it's feasible in both Spanish and Chinese, simplified Chinese.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess I would just submit, I know feasibility is always, it's often a function of money available. And so, you know, to the extent when Director Calderon, when you're communicating with the Parks Foundation about what's urgent this month or this quarter for the foundation to focus on, to me, that in-language piece is just so important at this time, especially. So for your consideration.
Absolutely. Michelle and I will discuss that next time. I know the commission's been very supportive, including funding our first bilingual park aid and doing a couple other measures. So we will include that in our next conversation.
Yeah, it's just such a great opportunity and so needed right now. Okay, that's it for me. We heard from other commissioners. Any public comments on this item?
Sure. I have not received any written comments, Madam Chair, but I'll ask my colleague Janet to ask for verbal comments.
Thank you. As a reminder for those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. As of right now, I don't see any hands raised, but I'll provide a few more seconds in case there are others that would like to raise their hand to speak on this item. Okay, seeing none. Chair Green.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Moving then to item 7.4. This is an action item for the commission to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to adopt the Parks Department's proposed reductions to its fiscal year 21 approved recommended budget.
Yeah, and I will, Rolando, who is our fiscal and admin manager, will be giving the presentation. Just wanted to highlight a point that I'm sure he will discuss as well, though. As I mentioned earlier, the department has a 5% reduction obligation of our operating budget. And so that's going to be the focus of the presentation. We are still working through the entire budget right now and still working with the county manager's office on projections and some of our funding obligations. So we're working through that. So Rolando's focus will be on that 5% reduction. And with that, I will turn it over to Rolando.
Thank you, Nicholas. Suki, can you display my presentation, please?
Sure.
Thank you. I don't see it just yet. Thank you, Suki. Well, good afternoon, Park Commissioners, Mr. Calderon, Mr. Lombardi, Parks and County staff, and members of the public. My name is Rolando Arqueta, Administrative and Financial Services Manager for the Parks Department. I will be presenting a brief update on the fiscal year 2021 budget, including the Parks Department's proposed operating budget reduction plan, as Nicholas indicated earlier. The picture to the left was taken at Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, and I chose to include it as I felt it was a good representation of the current economic climate that we're in. Although these are dark and uncertain times, there's still light guiding us down a path to another side. Suki, next slide, please. I added this quote as I believe it really represents the Parks Department's mentality since I've been with the Parks 2.5 years ago, and especially now today. As an organization, we will continue to provide the best possible services to our visitors and residents, and always strive to do our best no matter what challenges are placed before us. Suki, next slide, please. In terms of my brief budget update, I wanted to spend a few minutes discussing the County and Parks Department's current financial situation and what is expected this fiscal year. Additionally, I wanted to review the department's proposed plan for meeting its 5% budget reduction requirement, as Nicholas mentioned. I'll follow that with a department level budget overview and a timeline. Finally, I will conclude my presentation by doing my best to answer any questions you may have regarding this update. Suki, next slide, please. As I alluded to earlier, these are uncertain times. Making projections and budgeting has become even more difficult due to the pandemic. There are no comparisons or similar experiences to rely on when budgeting. Over the past 6 months, COVID-19 cases have fluctuated and increased drastically. There have been closures and partial closures of businesses and organizations, including parks. No one truly knows when there will be a vaccine or when a vaccine will be widely distributed and available for use. As a result of the pandemic, as Nicholas mentioned in his presentation, the county is projecting a budget deficit in the amount of $109 million. And that includes a $20 million shortfall in Measure K sales tax revenue this fiscal year. This is in addition to the county health system structural deficit, which totaled about $57 million even before the pandemic began. And I don't know where they're at this point in time. Because of these financial issues, sometime within the last 2 months, the county manager's office instructed county departments to prepare to make budget reductions to their 2021 budgets. For parks, as again, Nicholas mentioned, we would need to reduce our budget by about $754,000, which is, again, 5% of the department's ongoing support from the county and what we define as net county costs, which was previously about $15 million. Fortunately, the department's Measure K budget is subject to only minimal reductions. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the department will generate less revenue this fiscal year, and thus the department will need to account for these revenue losses by making further reductions. As things are changing daily, as Nicholas alluded to earlier, the department expects to finalize revenue projections over the next week. In speaking to a few county agencies in the Bay Area, a few agencies mentioned to me that their overall revenue reductions will probably be about 25 to 30%. For comparison, a 30% reduction to revenue would be close to about $500,000 in the Parks Department's operating budget. And that's when you exclude Measure K and other revenue sources not likely to be as affected. Suki, next slide, please. To meet the department's 5% reduction requirement and limit the impact to the department as much as possible, the department plans to keep 4 unfilled positions vacant, including 3 Park Ranger 2s and 1 Assistant Parks Director position. There are also adjustments and reductions to the administration budget and the postponement of the Ranger Leadership Program. To help mitigate the impacts associated with not filling vacant positions, the department will add more park aides this fiscal year to assist with park operations. And as of now, the department will add 8 additional park aides. There will be about 44 park aides in the park system over the course of the fiscal year, which is about a 16% increase from last year. I should highlight that there is a hiring freeze currently in effect in the county. However, due to the extra help status of park aides, the department was able to get these positions approved. And as I mentioned previously, the Measure K reduction to parks is minimal, about 15,000. The county manager's office is proposing to remove all Measure K cost of living adjustments for fiscal year 2021. And the Parks Department just simply doesn't have the flexibility in this arena to make any adjustments as it's performed at the county level. I should note that although the County Board of Supervisors did not formally approve the county or Parks Department's reduction plan, as you see before yourself, the board did receive these plans from each county department at its August 4th meeting just the other day, or 2 days ago. Next slide, please, Suki. To give the commission and viewers an idea of the composition of the Parks Department's budget, this slide shows what the County Board of Supervisors already approved in June and added known September revisions, including the reductions that I introduced in the previous slide. There will be further adjustments, including rollover funding from the previous fiscal year, additional fund balance, and decreases in revenue. So the composition will change, but I wanted to be sure to share kind of a snapshot as of today of where the Parks Department's budget actually is. The first pie chart shows that the department's 3 largest revenue sources include other financing sources, Measure K, and charges for services. Other financing sources are primarily one-time revenue sources, including funding from the general fund and grants, and it's primarily used for capital projects. Measure K is the half-cent sales tax the county receives, which helps both the department's operating budget, including operations and maintenance, and the capital projects budget. Charges for services include everything the department collects in revenue from fees and other charges for services. So that would include vehicle entrance fees, reservations, and berth rentals. Although not a revenue source, it is important to note, or to point out rather, that the Parks Department receives ongoing financial support from the county in addition to one-time and Measure K funds. With the 5% reduction, the department's new net county costs, as indicated on the slide, would be about $14.3 million. Suki, next slide, please. The department's top 3 expected expenditures in this chart include fixed assets, salaries and benefits, and services and supplies. Fixed asset appropriations will be used primarily for capital projects, which I'll talk about more in the next slide. And salaries and benefits account for 77 authorized positions and 45 extra help and limited term positions. As I mentioned before, the Parks Department will add 8 additional park aides this fiscal year. In terms of services and supplies, That's what really helps the Parks Department safely remove things like hazardous trees, reduce fire fuels, and purchase much needed tools and equipment for staff to keep parks safe. At the department level, reserves are over 5.7 million. This includes about 2.8 million in our operating budget and 2.9 in all other budgets, including capital. All budget units that make up the department exceed the county's reserves requirement, which is 2% of net appropriations. But at this time, the department is not expecting to use reserves. It is my strong belief that reserves will only be used when absolutely necessary. With not knowing how long the pandemic and economic recovery will last, we'll look to at least maintain reserves this fiscal year. Suki, next slide, please. The Parks Department currently has 10 capital projects it is managing. Sometimes we separate a few out, but for this presentation, I'll kind of consolidate a few. And a few, as Nicholas mentioned before, with the assistance of the Department of Public Works. The 2021 recommended budget included a $26.4 million capital project budget, but it is important to note that not all appropriations for projects from the prior year are calculated with that. So, consistent with the county's policy, those appropriations actually don't get added until the adopted budget, or what we call September revisions, final budget changes to the recommended budget. And at this time, we're estimating that there will be approximately 18 million in rollover for these capital projects. Suki, next slide, please. A budget timeline for the next 2 months is included on this slide. The department's focus the past month or two has been on closing out fiscal year 2019-20. We will use the information from the year-end close process to determine rollovers and fund balance for fiscal year 2021, the fiscal year we're currently in. The department's September revisions or final budget changes to the budget are due in a few weeks. The Board of Supervisors will receive all county September revisions in mid-September, and the actual adopted budget hearing will occur at the end of September, September 29th. Suki, next slide, please. This concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. As a reminder, though, the action item is to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to adopt the Parks Department's proposed reductions to its fiscal year 2021 approved recommended budget, which I mentioned on slide 5. So Suki, if you could please go back to slide 5, I would appreciate that. Thank you, Suki, for your assistance on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rolando. That was the most poetically introduced budget presentation I've ever seen.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioners Okello and Mirrlees, any questions for Rolando?
To the chair. So the 5% reduction that is being proposed primarily impacts the personnel portion of the budget. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I really didn't catch that.
I think I could hear it okay. I think Commissioner Okello asked for confirmation that the 5% reduction primarily affects the personnel portion of the budget. Is that correct?
That's correct in the sense that we will not be filling vacant positions, but we will not be eliminating any positions. This is strictly for this fiscal year at this time. We will not be eliminating any positions.
And so the services and supplies portion of the budget, there's no reductions happening in that part of the budget at all.
There is, Commissioner, to the administration budget. We made several reductions. As you all know, the main office has not been in the office physically since March 16th, and we, foresee us not going into the office for the foreseeable future. So we made reductions to, printing, office supplies, various services and supplies really that mainly impacts the administration budget.
Because the sub item on this item is specifically talking about essentially increasing the amount of money that is paid to, the correctional department of the state of California for using prisoners to help us do some of the work that we need to do in terms of fuel reduction. And it's proposing, augmenting it from $10,000 a year to essentially $100,000 to $120,000 a year. So is that going to be possible today? Given the budgets that is going to be proposed to, budget revisions that are going to be proposed to the Board of Supervisors?
Yeah, Commissioner, this is Nicholas. I think we'll discuss that matter further during the next item. But whatever resolution we come to, we would absorb within our existing proposed budget, or we would essentially absorb within our existing proposed budget.
So through the chair, don't you think that it may be appropriate for us to discuss that item before we go back to the recommendation that's being made to us regarding the budget?
Okay. We can, let's hear further questions on this item, and then we can decide to, I'll have to ask Craig if I'm continuing or tabling until we hear item 7.5. Any further questions, Commissioner Okello, though, before we?
Well, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. And then Commissioner Mirrlees, any questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, we're leaving 3 park ranger positions unfilled, and we're adding 8 park aides. Is that the plan?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay, so we're kind of downsizing in terms of salary. We're getting more employees, but at a lower level. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, Commissioner, given the hiring freeze that the county is currently in, at this time, the county manager's office is allowing extra help, exemptions to assist, departments that might be having some staffing shortages. So that is correct.
Okay, and you think you can make this work, Nicholas?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can. Look, I think, Commissioner, every county department is being asked to do more with less. And under the circumstances with COVID and with really a need to continue to provide services, I think the Parks Department is ready to do our part under this proposed reduced operating budget. In fact, I know we're ready to do our part under this reduced operating budget.
Yeah, I was around in 2010. This happened once before, and we had to cut back, and it didn't work. And the Board of Supervisors had to jump in and give Parks more money. So Parks could not handle the cutback in the way that other departments could, because sometimes in a economic downturn, the parks get more use, and we can't reduce the expenses in the same way that other departments can. So yeah, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope we're able to make it work. The parks budget is much higher now than it was in 2010. So maybe there's more ability to change. and to take a little bit of a cut. But yeah, scream bloody murder if you think we need more money, because parks is important in an economic downturn and in a COVID crisis.
Yeah, Commissioner, we agree. And Parks has always run lean. You know, I've been with the county for almost 10 years. Parks has always run lean. And but with that said, you know, we've gone through and we've looked at our service levels at each park, and we've planned how each park will respond to this. And you know, we're going to have to be creative and strategic, but we are prepared to provide the best services we possibly can under this proposed budget.
Through the chair, a question to Mr. Lombardi. Given the past experience that Commissioner Mill has just referenced about previous cutbacks, we put those 3 park rangers in the budget. We were convinced we needed them. And that happened I presume, prior to COVID-19. We are having visitors triple in some of the parks. We are having park rangers do additional work. So they normally do, but you know, they're doing it to a far greater extent. So a question to Mr. Lombardi, what do you anticipate the impact is going to be on staff overtime? And would that chew up all the amount of money that we think you're saving by not having those 3 positions?
Commissioner, I appreciate your question. As I referred to earlier, it's been a very trying time. It's pressed staff, community, departments to extreme levels. It's been stressful, but we're holding fast. I don't think that we're going to break at this point. We are assessing everything we can do to shift staffing to help with this. I'm not going to say it's a crisis. It's a reduction in the county. We are following guidelines. I don't think we've hit critical mass yet, but it has been stressful. And I appreciate your questions, like I appreciate other commissioners voicing their opinion. It's been a test for all of us. So I agree with the director. I agree with Rolando in budget right now. We're holding fast. If it gets worse and it goes to another level, I'm sure Nicholas will have those discussions with the county manager to try to shore it up. But I think we could do this right now at the current level of service that we are providing.
Thank you. Any further questions, Commissioners Okello or Miralles?
Yes, I would have, and this is just an informational question. What percentage has overtime taken of the department's budget? That's all.
I didn't.
I think the question may have been to Rolando to talk about what fraction, what percentage of the department's budget currently is it budgeted for overtime?
I don't know exactly, you know, what the budgeted amount for overtime is, but I can tell you it is extremely low. The Parks Department really hasn't, you know, spent too much on overtime. I know just recently we had to give in the July 4th weekend. We needed extra coverage, but overall at a department level, overtime has been quite low. It's not significant, but I can follow up on that.
Could you please?
Yes, I will.
I had just a couple of questions. You know, this this makes sense, this is integral, what alternatives were considered to this reduction plan?
Yeah, Commissioner, these were, we have assessed our existing projects and what type of projects we may be able to reduce or eliminate. But when we looked at the entire board, we felt that this was the best decision we can make right now, especially given that the further we defer maintenance and improvement of certain areas, the more expensive it's going to get. And there's no guarantee that we're going to have that same funding opportunity in the near future. So by looking at these positions and keeping these positions vacant as proposed, we're able to complete some of our critical deferred maintenance projects and some of our, so that we can improve those areas of the park and once again, not incur significant increased project costs down the road.
For the 8 park aides you are able to hire, how flexible is the nature of the work they're able to do?
You know, I will defer to Superintendent Lombardi on the typical kind of day-to-day activities of the park aide.
The basic support of the park aides is under the direction of rangers every day. So basically, we've got litter pickup, we have cleaning of the restrooms and facilities, we have also enforcement or any other scenario that comes up if we have fallen trees, etc., that we need to chip, buck up, stuff like that. So they are an essential workforce that we can manage to give us the best bang for the buck right now. And what we're going through right now with the 8 positions that was given to us, we are vetting, and I'm not sure what the number is. Maybe Londa could chime in on this, but I believe we had over 50, maybe even 60 applicants coming right now looking for work. So we are looking for the best possible employees that we could plug in the situation to give us the best help at this time. So that's kind of been an interesting thing too, is people are applying for work and they want to work for parks. So there is an opportunity there.
And building on that, if you look at the tasks that the park aides are able to perform for us, they're really the tasks that are in greatest need right now: the garbage service, the litter pickup, the cleaning of facilities, the restocking of facilities. And so that frees up the rangers' time to be able to do things, activities that only the rangers can do, the enforcement of rules and regulations primarily. So the hiring of the park aides are going to allow us to satisfy the greatest demand that we have right now, given what we're seeing in our parks. And so it's really the best value decision we can make.
That makes sense. I submit, given what we heard earlier about the interpretive program going from 2 to 1 for a year, like, would these aides be able to support Ranger Wright in that effort? It seems to me that, I mean, of course, litter pickup is important and physical maintenance is important, but like, we have an acute need to be communicating and trying to find ways to help. And it would seem to me to be worthwhile use of one of those people.
Through the chair, we, you know, as management, we don't decide these decisions in a vacuum. We've been having several budget meetings with rangers, including Catherine, and they voiced their support for these additional park aides. And with Catherine in particular, she has a separate funding for the interpretive program. And one of the discussions we had is she has sufficient funding to perhaps you know, hire a park aide or a couple of interns to help support her and the program.
Great, that's good to hear. It's just bigger than one person at this point, it seems. And
Commissioner, in light of some of the comments you were making earlier, the conversations I've had with Ranger Wright have also focused on bringing on another bilingual park aide, or aide, which will not just give her the additional staffing resources that she needs, but also make her program more versatile.
Yeah, that's great. That was my next question. Well done. How'd you know? You really didn't. It's kind of amazing. Okay, and my last question on this is just about the outlook for state funds. I mean, I know this and federal, I guess I saw something about interiors actually like putting a whole bunch of money into parks preservation, but I think it's mostly federal parkland. Like, is there anything on the department's radar that might like create a cushion through grant funding?
So there's a couple opportunities. The state had the recent bond measure, which we're still working with the state to redefine the qualifications in light of the fact that San Mateo County is not competitive given how they've outlined the funding formula. But with that said, you may be referring to the Great American Outdoor Act, which was recently just signed into law. And that's mainly federal land. National Park Service. I have not heard of how that county parks. And so at this time, given comments I've heard from the National Park Service, I'm not sure if there will be an impact on us. If there is, I will most certainly look to share that. But I do know that the state is constantly looking for new opportunities. There was talk about a possible another bond measure, which ended up falling through in light of COVID and the financial need for that response. But as opportunities come up, we are always part of those conversations.
Thank you. Craig, if we want to hear content related to 7.5 before taking action on 7.4, what do I do now? Do I continue this item to the call of the chair?
So, I think you can if you're so inclined. I guess I would make the point that the action item on 7.4 is related to the department's 5% county mandated 5% reduction in budget, and 7.5 and my understanding is that there's no reduction in the budget related to I guess that would relate to 7.5.
Okay.
I'm not sure these two items, I guess, go together, but if you want to put 7.4 over and go to 7.5 and then come back to 7.4, I think that's okay.
I mean, I defer. Commissioner Okello, you had raised the notion of hearing 7.5 first. Would you like to do that? Or you take a vote here?
Yeah, through the chair, I didn't actually realize that 7.5 was an entirely different item from 7.4. I just thought it was a subset.
Oh.
7.4, just by the way it's presented on the agenda. But I would like to make the motion that we discuss 7.5 first before we take action on 7.4.
I think that sounds fine. I don't know that we need a vote on. Do we need a vote on that, Craig? Sorry.
I don't think that you do.
Okay, so can we do? I'm sorry, just wanted to say to continue this item. Like to continue this item.
I think if the commission wants to, actually, if you want to do it as a vote to discuss 7.5 and come back to 7.4 on Commissioner Okello's motion, that's fine also.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to hear item 7.5 before we vote on 7.4. Do I have a second? Okay, seeing not a second.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Oh, yes, a second. Thank you, Neil. Sorry, with only 3, this is how it goes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. So roll call vote then for that motion.
Sure. Commissioner Marilis?
Aye.
Commissioner Okello?
Aye.
Commissioner Mena is absent. Chair Green?
Aye.
Thank
So, okay, so now we will hear item 7.5. Great. Nicholas, would you like to begin or would you like me to?
Yeah, I think this was a matter that was raised in a prior meeting, and Commissioner Green had drafted the letter that is part of the agenda packet. One of the in light of some of the conversations and the decisions that the board has had to make recently, primarily around the funding, one of the ideas I was hoping to offer up was, instead of taking action on this letter, at least in its current draft form, the department would be happy to agree to not use, to essentially suspend our use of the California Department of Correction and Rehabilitation Work Crew Program, and work with CAL FIRE to see if there is a way to come up with a more equitable way of working out the compensation for the work. You know, in light of the fact that the county is going through the financial situation it's in, as stated earlier, the county's overall shortfall is estimated to exceed $100 million. I think asking the board to backfill $100,000 for this, you know, it would seem to me that the more appropriate decision would be for the department to find those funds in its existing budget. And so what I would like to propose is that the department work with CAL FIRE to see if there's, as I said, a more equitable way, and come up with a more holistic strategy in a way that we are not, you know, the commission's not asking the board for additional funding. Once again, that would likely be filled by the department's existing proposed budget.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that we can solve the and I'm sorry, I don't think I read the item itself. So let me just back up and say we are here discussing item 7.5, a letter to the Board of Supervisors requesting that the San Mateo County Parks Department no longer use California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation work crews to deliver the fuel reduction work that they have been used for in the past. And so if I'm understanding correctly, what you're saying, Director Calderon, is that we can achieve the desired end represented by this letter, that San Mateo County Parks no longer make use of unpaid prison labor / underpaid prison labor to deliver our fuel reduction work. And we can solve for that within our own budget without reducing the level of fuel reduction activities. Is that right?
Yeah, Commissioner, what I think what would make the most sense is, yeah, we would not use California Department of Correction, Rehabilitation work crew until we can talk to CAL FIRE, come up with a solution, and then bring it back to the commission at a later date, and either say, we've come up with this solution that I think would resolve the concern expressed in the letter you drafted, or we would come back and say, hey, we weren't able to come up with a solution, so we won't use those work crews, but bring our solution back to the commission after we've had an opportunity to work through something that can satisfy the concerns expressed in the letter. I don't foresee us, to be perfectly honest, I don't foresee us having any CAL FIRE work crew days for the remainder of the year, given a variety of things, including a reduction in prison levels due to COVID, due to governor not being able to hire as many seasonal firefighters. I would imagine that will impact the amount of work that the work crews are doing during actual wildfires instead of preventative measures like fuel reduction. And then third being the conversation we're having right now, I'm happy to not bring CAL FIRE crews in to our parks until we are able to come up with a solution that is addressed by your letter, and bring that back to the commission.
That is agreeable to me. I mean, to me, the purpose of calling this as an action item and, with the thought of raising it to the board was that was where the policy decision would be made, because it would have been a budget consideration and backfill. But if the department can deliver its fuel reduction targets, which are measured, which is so wonderful, without needing board intervention. To me, that's the best. I mean, we should be solving this on our own. And I'm glad to hear that it's possible. So as the author of the letter, I would submit that perhaps we could continue this item to the call of the chair so that we can hear it back when you have an update for us. And this letter can, remain part of the file as a potential action we might need to take, if not in the current budget, at some future date. But I would love to see this just not be part of how we do business anymore. If that's agreeable to my fellow commissioners, then I think we can solve for ourselves. That's great.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I thought the letter was addressing a much larger issue. So I do not know whether there's any other department within the county that uses the same services. It may not be for fuel reduction, but they may be using prisoners, for some other public purpose. So to the director, would you know anything or any department that currently uses CDC?
Yeah, Commissioner, I am unaware of any county department that uses California Department of Correction and Rehabilitation crews for any of their work. I'm unaware of.
Okay. Could we find out, because Public Works potentially may have the kind of work that, the CDC inmates can do. So could we find out as part of continuing this item? So when you report back as to what your deliberations, with CAL FIRE, you could report back and say you've looked at all the departments and there's currently no department that is utilizing, CDC.
I'd be happy to report back on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's good to keep this letter, like this approach kind of on the back burner by continuing the item. And then, if we need to revise to amend it so that it is a policy statement instead of a budget statement or what have you, we can do so once we understand kind of the county perspective. But it sounds like for us and for parks, we can solve without advancing this letter. Commissioner Miralles, any comments or questions on this item?
Yeah, we haven't talked about this before. This is a really interesting issue. I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you for bringing this up. I tried to do as much research as I could before this meeting because this was not on my radar. And I read the Atlantic article that talked about, the tie-in with slavery. And I also read, an ACLU piece. And what was hard to find is any information from the actual inmates, and how they feel about it. And there was a letter to the editor of the LA Times written by a woman who works in a kitchen at a cafeteria, and she was supporting the program and said, to her view, most of the antipathy was coming from outside, from people that weren't in prison, and it was a pretty popular program in the prison. And so my thought was, there's an issue with payment. I guess the county pays something like $15 an hour, but then the inmates get 20% of that, which isn't very much. And then they get another 20% when they're released from prison that goes into an escrow account. That's my understanding of it from as much as I could glean. So the prison department keeps most of the money. So the inmates are virtual volunteers. What I started thinking was that if the inmates really like this, and this gets them out of their prison cell, who am I to tell them that they have to sit in a prison cell rather than go volunteer in a park? And so if we were going to write a letter, I would suggest something that we would discuss how the payment is made and how much payment. Maybe the inmates should get more of the payment that the county is paying. And maybe it shouldn't be a way for the Department of Corrections to make money, but the inmates could learn about making money. They could learn about work. They could get out of their jail cell. And what I would hate is just to put the kibosh on the whole program, because if I have never been in prison, I've never been in jail yet, but if I were, I would want to get out. And I would like to leave an opportunity for inmates to get out if they can and go to a park in some fashion. So if we could work through the payment idea, and maybe a workers' comp maybe is necessary that they might not be getting now. I know it's a little bit of a difficult thing to take on, but I don't feel comfortable outlawing it and taking away the possibility for people to get out of prison and go to a park. So I would love to talk about this more in the future, and maybe even hear from somebody who's been through this program.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments, Commissioner. I agree with you wholeheartedly about not wanting to speak on behalf of or interrupt what may seem like benefits for people who are living through incarceration. I'll note that that is the preferred approach of the letter as drafted too. There's language in there that says supporting prisoner reentry training is important to break the cycle of incarceration. We need not abandon that support. We should simply commit to pay for the work we receive in accordance with county wage requirements. That would be my preference as well. That we find a way to just compensate fairly for the labor we receive
I think that
from
would
the source.
be a great thing to work towards in the Parks Commission
Yeah.
in the future. Yeah.
Through the chair,
Sure, yes.
if I may, I would be happy to reach out to some of our contacts at CAL FIRE and see if there's a way to get both a presentation from them and maybe a way of giving the commission an opportunity to hear from individuals who have gone through the program or are going through the program. I don't know how we would work that out logistically. I think we could work towards that. If that's something the commission is interested in having done. I know that we have a lot of items on the future agenda list. So I want to be conscientious of that, but I know that this is an important issue, and I think it deserves the time and the attention to really discuss it.
Thank you. Yeah, we can consider that as we look at the calendar going forward.
Chair Green?
Sure, yeah,
I'm gonna ask for, should we ask for public comment for this item?
that would be fine. But well, yes, discussion, and then we do the motion. Yes, okay, so public comment on this item, please.
The public comment is for item 7.5. And I have not received any written comments, so I'm gonna ask my colleague Janet to ask for verbal comments.
Thank you, Suki. So I don't see any hands raised at the moment, but we'll provide a few more seconds in case there are others that would like to raise their hands to speak on this item. And then as a reminder for those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Chair Green, I don't see any hands raised.
Thank you both very much. I would like to make a motion then to continue this item to the call of the chair, and we will hear back at a future date from Director Calderon about kind of the approach to dealing with this issue and solving internally. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Sure. Commissioner Marilis,
Aye.
Commissioner Okello,
Aye.
Commissioner Mena is absent. Chair Green,
Aye, thank you.
motion passes.
Wonderful. Going back then, now that we have some more context for that item, do I have a motion regarding item 7.4 approval of the department's approach to their 5% budget reduction target for fiscal 21.
I move that we trust the Parks Department's judgment and move this through to the Board of Supervisors.
I second it.
Okay, thank
So
you.
just to clarify, it's a motion to approve with a positive recommendation, right? Commissioner Mick, that's what we're saying. Okay.
Sorry.
We don't do a lot of action items, so I'll just make sure we go.
Okay, before I take the roll call, Chair Green, I'll ask for public comment for 7.4. I have not received any written comments. Madam Clerk, please proceed with verbal comments.
Thank you. As a reminder for those joining by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised at the moment, but I'll provide a few more seconds in case there are others that would like to speak on this item. Chair Green, there are no hands raised.
Okay, motion is on the floor. I'll take the roll call. Commissioner Marlies,
Aye.
Commissioner Okello,
Aye.
Commissioner Mena is absent. Chair Green,
Aye, thank you.
motion passes.
Wonderful. Okay, that takes us to commissioners' reports. Item 8.1 can just go down the line for any updates. Commissioner Okello.
I do apologize. I do have another Zoom meeting at 6 o'clock. And so I'm already 12 minutes late. But what I wanted to say on this one particular item, I'm still waiting for a connection with the liaison to the Youth Commission. Somebody that I could talk to. So if staff could provide me with that, I would be most appreciative. And I would also like to, at some point, schedule a meeting with the chair, since she and I are both on the Finance and Budget Committee. So if you could do that, I'd be most appreciative as well. And that concludes my statement. And I do apologize, I do have to leave, and wish everybody the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have no further action items. Craig, can we continue running through the agenda, or now that we don't have a quorum, should we adjourn?
Yeah, I think you don't have any more action items here. So I think you can't, well, I think you do have to adjourn now that you've lost the quorum.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm glad that we got through the content. We will, we'll be in suspense for your updates till next time, and mine as well.
No. Thank you for bringing up that issue, Heather.
Sure, I'm glad we can do something about it. It's very exciting. Thank you to the department, Nicholas. Okay, we will, I'll move for us to adjourn then, since we're down to 2 lonely commissioners, and we will see everyone. Our next meeting, oh, tell me, is it September or October?
October.
It'll be October.
Okay, next meeting, first Thursday of October. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
The time is 6:13 and we're now adjourned.
Bye.